Welcome back, and today we are going to make Snickerdoodle cookies. This is an old recipe from my husband's grandmother, and she was very poor, so she didn't have measuring cups or anything like that, so she just kind of eyeballed everything. So it took like a few years for my husband and I to actually, we knew all the ingredients, but to figure out, because she never wrote it down, and even if she would have just said a bunch of this and a bunch of that. And so it took several years for us to go ahead and actually perfect it. Like I said, we knew the ingredients, but to get the amounts correct, and then I typed it out and put it in my cookbook, because I have a cookbook that I made for myself, all my favorite recipes. And so that's what I did, and I've been making this recipe for a long time now, and it is a very popular one amongst friends and family that I give cookies to, and I like it a lot too. So let's get started. Today I'm going to start with my dry ingredients because I have my butter kind of softening up on the counter. So I'm going to start with the dry ingredients. So I am going to be doubling this recipe, as I do with a lot of my recipes that I do. And so I have to be very careful. The flour that you need for this recipe is 2 3/4 cup. And I'm going to be doubling it. So I'm just going to go ahead, that's actually 5.5 cups. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and do the 2 3/4 cups twice. So I'm going to do that because I think it'd just be easier than having to explain all the math at this point and doing that. So what I'm going to actually need is to measure out first the 4 cups of flour. One, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then I need 3/4 cup twice. In measuring flour, I didn't mention this earlier because I was too concentrated on counting. Okay, so in measuring the flour, you must level it off like this. So I need 3/4 twice. 1, 2. Okay, so that is 2 3/4 cups of flour done twice, which ends up equaling out to 5.5 cups. Okay, let's set that aside. And then need 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So 1/2 and 1/2 is 1 teaspoon. And I don't like to use a lot of salt, so I'm just going to use, you need some salt to make the baking soda work, so I'm just going to do a little bit less than what it actually calls for. Okay, and then a teaspoon of baking soda. Now it's very important that you use baking soda and not baking powder. So in this recipe I need baking soda, and so it calls for 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and I'm doubling it, so it's going to be 2 teaspoons. When measuring baking soda, you need to also level it off. So I use the lid right here, and I'm going to go scoop down, way down in there. 1, 2. Okay, so if you've watched my channel before, you know that I like to modify most of the recipes. So later I'm going to be rolling the cookies in cinnamon and sugar, but I like to go ahead and add some extra cinnamon into the actual batter. So I'm just going to, and I'm not even measuring, I'm just going to guess, and I'm just going to add some extra cinnamon, and that's not even written in the recipe. You don't have to add the extra cinnamon. I just like, and my family likes a lot of cinnamon. So I'm going to take a fork and blend together the dry ingredients. Okay, so that part's done. I'm going to set this aside. I'm checking on my butter. Trying to warm it up. It's a cold day today, so I should have brought out the butter sooner, but I've been very busy today. Trying to get ready for the holidays and everything. Very busy time of year. So thank you for joining me in the kitchen. Makes it more fun if I am going ahead and visiting with the people in the out there in YouTube land. Okay, so the recipe, there's my timer. I preheated the oven for 350, and so it went off. Okay, so the recipe calls for 2 eggs, so I'm doubling it. So I am going to do 4 eggs into this bowl. And it's always a good idea to put the eggs in a separate bowl from your mixing bowl, your main mixing bowl, because you have to look to see if anything is odd with the egg. Because once in a while you open up an egg and there's just something not right with it, and you have to just pitch it. So I always do it in a separate bowl, just in case if anybody was wondering. So far, so good. Okay, got a little shell. I'll take the other shell and fish it out of there. And then I'm going to go wash my hands with soap and water, and I'll be back in a sec. So now I always like to add my extract to the eggs because it's liquid, and I like to have my liquids together. So, all right, so I need, it says 1 teaspoon of vanilla, so I'm going to put in 2 because I am doubling it. Make sure you always grab the right one. Okay, it's a teaspoon. So 1, 2. So that's done. And then I'm going to scramble this up a little. I like to sometimes pre-mix some of the stuff. It makes it a lot easier. All right, so I'm going to set that aside. And now it's time for butter and sugar. I'm going to have that in a separate bowl completely. Okay, so I'll do the sugar first. All right, so I need 1½ cups of sugar. So 1½ and 1½ is 3 cups of sugar. So I'm going to measure out 3 cups of sugar. Okay, so when measuring sugar, you'll want to level it up also. White sugar. Brown sugar is a whole other thing. I'll go over that in another video. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. All right, so now what I like to do, let's set this aside here. Oh, wait, gotta add the butter. All right, so if your butter is not completely warmed up from sitting on the counter, and it might be hard if it's really cold where you are, like here, it would take a while. My counter's like ice. So what you can do, which helps your mixer, so you're not at it for a long time. Well, first I was going to show you, actually. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so we need 1 cup of butter for a single batch. We need 2 cups of butter for a double batch. So on your butter, a whole stick of butter is 8 tablespoons, but it's also a ½ cup. So a half a cup and a ½ cup is 1 cup. That's 1 cup. If you were going to do a single batch, you're doing a double batch. So 4 sticks is 2 cups. Okay, now back to what I was saying before. So what I like to do if my butter is not softened enough, and you don't really, I have a feeling somebody might say, hey, why don't you just put it in the microwave? Well, if you do decide to put it in the microwave, be very careful, because if you heat it up too much and it turns liquidy, then you're not going to have the right consistency, because then now part of it's cooked already. Certain recipes, they tell you to melt the butter. This one, it does not. So what I like to do if I don't feel that it's totally soft, is I'll just go ahead and kind of cut it up like this. Then it starts kind of breaking it up a little. So that's what I'm going to do today, because it's very cold and the counter's like ice. And it doesn't matter how, you know, you can just do it like tabs of butter. Whatever you can do to kind of break it up a little. Okay, so that's part of it. Of course, I'm getting messy hands, but if I'm not getting my hands messy, if I'm not making my kitchen messy, then I'm not cooking. So that's my motto. And this recipe, I have never done it with anything other than butter, real butter. So if somebody tries to do it with a different type of substitute and it doesn't come out right, it's really made to use real butter. Okay. If you decide to try something other than real butter and it comes out good, mention it in the comments down below, because I'd be interested to know if it does. That'd be interesting. I like real butter, and actually real butter, your body knows what to do with real butter, so but I know there's some people that maybe can't have any dairy, so maybe they substitute something, I don't know. So that's why I'm saying, please send me a comment if you've tried a different type of, and it actually worked out. That would be good to know. All right. So, on when we get to the point where the dough is done and everything, I'm going to be rolling the dough into balls, and then I'm going to be rolling the balls into cinnamon and sugar. So I want to make, before we even start mixing, I want to do my cinnamon and sugar mix. So it is 25% sugar and 75%, no, it's 25% cinnamon, excuse me, and 75% sugar. So what I'm going to do to make it easy is people are going to go, well, how do I know, exactly what that means? So it's kind of like there's four quarters and $1. So let's say let's pretend for a minute that the cinnamon and the sugar are all quarters. So I want 3 of my quarters to be sugar. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3. And I want 1 of my quarters to be cinnamon. Like a quarter is 25 cents. So this is so that was 75%. This is 25%. And then I'm going to mix this together. And I hope that makes sense to people. But basically, I got 3 heaping tablespoons, and not to measure it exactly, of the sugar, and heaping one of the cinnamon. And if I run out, I'll just have to make more of this mixture. Hopefully that's enough. I don't want to get too much because then I end up throwing it out, because once you have raw dough and your cinnamon and sugar, you can't go ahead and use it for anything else. So, unless you were going to cook it, because of the egg situation. You don't want to eat raw eggs. Okay, so now I'm going to go over the mixer and we're going to start mixing everything together, and then later start forming the cookies. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is mix up the butter and the sugar. And if you've watched my videos before, you know that I'll go over this. So I apologize for the repetitiveness, but if you're this is your first time watching, you need to know this. So this particular attachment you do not want to use for cookie dough. This is a wisp. It's good for doing egg whites and things that are very lightweight. And this attachment here, this one is good for doing cakes, frosting, and that sort of thing. Brownies. Okay. Mashed potatoes even. Alright, so what you want to use is a dough hook. Now if your mixer, if you have a hand mixer or just a different type of mixer that does not have a dough hook, then you're going to want to use the other one that's not a wisp. So the wisp is no on this, because this is a very heavy dough. So I'm going to put this on, and we're going to start with butter and sugar first. My splatter screen, because otherwise it's going to be a mess. So we're going to do butter, sugar, scrape the bowl and do all that, eggs, and then flour on a little bit at a time. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to show you. It's not done yet, I know that already, but I'm going to show you so you get an idea of what it looks like when it's partially done. Okay, so it's not done yet, because what we're doing, the terminology that they use on a lot of recipes, is we're creaming the butter and the sugar. So cream the butter and the sugar. So now we're getting close. So I'm going to take my rubber spatula, and I'm going to make sure, I'm going to scrape the sides. It's actually not too bad on the sides. I'm just kind of wanting to peek underneath my beater to make sure there's nothing stuck to the bottom, and there's not, so that's good. So I'm going to continue. Okay, so let's take a look. I think we're ready for the next ingredient, and normally if I knew that ahead of time I would just go ahead and add the eggs, but I want to show everybody what this is looking like. Okay, so that is creamed butter and sugar. Going to add all my eggs. I'm going to scrape the egg bowl with the rubber spatula. I'm going to mix this up well. Okay, time to scrape the bowl. Scrape the sides. Try to make sure there's nothing stuck to the bottom. It's very important when making cookies, or most anything, to go ahead and make sure that you mix it very thoroughly. That makes the difference between the good tasting cookie and the bad tasting cookie. Or a cookie that the taste is just not quite fair, it's a little off. Probably because it wasn't mixed enough. Okay, so now it's time to add the flour. And when adding the flour, you're going to want to do it, I'm trying to see if I can maybe get that so you can kind of see as I'm adding it. I kind of move that slightly. You want to add a little bit at a time on a slower setting until we have everything added, then I'll speed it up. So I'm doing it like a scoop at a time, kind of let that get blended a little. Increase your speed slightly. And add a little bit more flour. Reduce the speed again, because you don't want the flour to fly everywhere. Increase it a little. Almost to the bottom, so I'm just gonna pour the rest in. I'm gonna increase the speed a little bit. Nothing's sticking. Scrape the sides. Okay. Nothing appears to be sticking on the bottom, so that's good. Okay. Go a little longer. I'm ready to take this off and start making the cookies. Okay, so what you need at this point is you have your batter, you have your cinnamon and sugar mixture, and then what you want to do is you want to have a little bit of flour in a bowl, just a little bit, and the flattest cup that you could find at your house, something very flat, and move some of the stuff over just a little. You can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so I'm going to take some dough, about this much, and I'm going to roll it. So maybe a little bit smaller than a golf ball size. Roll it like about that. I have small hands, so it's about like that big. You'll see better on the cookie sheet when I do it. And then trying to see which way this is going to work out so you can get the best idea. And then I'm going to roll it in the cinnamon and sugar mixture. And these are a pretty big cookie, so you want to make sure that you leave space behind, and I'll show you that as I'm doing this. And like I said, many family members and friends, this is their favorite cookie. And this is one of my favorite cookies to bake because, and I'll show you through the process, it's very easy to tell when snickerdoodles are done, which makes them an easier, as far as I'm concerned, easier cookie to bake. Because some cookies, you know, you don't want it raw, you don't want it overdone, and it's really hard to figure it out. But these cookies go through a few steps on their own, and then you really do know when to pull them, which is very nice. especially if you don't have a lot of experience baking and you're not sure. And even if you do have a lot of experience baking, it's hard to tell when a snickerdoodle is, when most cookies are done, but a snickerdoodle is very easy. So you see how I've spaced these out now? Well, I will show you the whole tray in just a sec. So you definitely have to like cinnamon because they have a lot of cinnamon flavors, that is for sure. Okay, so I'm going to show you this one. The tray. Oh. So that's how they look. And now it's time to go ahead and, usually what I would do is I'd do all my trays and then I would go through, but just so that you can see, I'm going to go like this, and it's going to be, I'll show you in a sec. You don't necessarily have to dip into flour every time. You don't want it to stick. That's the purpose of the flour. You don't want it to stick to your glass. So you might get a couple of cookies before you have to go dip in there. So what I want to show you, and I'm going to clean my hands and then show you in a sec. Okay, so what I want to show is kind of how thick they are, the size they are right now. So just notice that. I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of the trays ready, and then I'm going to pop these in the oven, and then through the process of them baking, I'm going to show you how the cookie looks, and then how it looks when it's ready to take out of the oven. Okay, so I'm ready to pop all the cookies in the oven. So I just counted, and a double batch makes 43 cookies. And just to show everybody again, this is the size. They will get a lot bigger. We'll check back in just a few. Okay, so I have to cook the snickerdoodles between 7 and 10 minutes, depending on what's going on with my oven and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to just check on these right now. And they're looking good, but they are definitely not done. But I'm going to do what I call the switcheroo. And I'm going to go ahead and switch, move the camera so you can see, the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top. So this is the halfway point because I set a timer for 5 minutes, and I think it probably will take 10 minutes. So I'm going to move ones from the bottom to the top, ones from the top to the bottom. Go longer, so we'll be back shortly. I'm going to do the top one, and I will see you soon. Okay, I'm going to show you the cookies again. So we're getting close, but we're not quite there yet with these cookies. So I want to show you, because a lot of times people don't know how long, especially a cookie that you've never made before, and these aren't that popular as far as like selling them at the store. Once in a while they have them in the bakery section, but so it's important that you know what they're actually supposed to look like. So those are not done yet. They look really close, but not quite yet. So we will just keep on checking, and then I will show you when they're done. So the cookies are done. Let me show you. So this is how they look. So they really, what they do is they really flatten out. Okay. So that's how they look when they're done. So as soon as they cool off a little, I'm going to put them on a cooling rack, and then I will taste test them. It's time to taste test one of the Snickerdoodle cookies. Still a bit warm. Super moist. And they do dry out a little bit, and that's how they're supposed to be. But right now, because it's fresh out of the oven, still kind of warm, they're a little bit more moist. Very, very good. I need some coffee. They're very delicious, very cinnamony, have just the right blend. I hope you enjoyed this video. These are very delicious. I'm anxious to end the video so I can finish going ahead and finishing this cookie and maybe grabbing a second one. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you for those that subscribe. If you don't subscribe, in case you didn't know, it does not cost anything to subscribe, so please subscribe and like the video. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I hope you go ahead and try making snickerdoodles and have fun. Thank you for watching.